Hey, how's it going all? Just want to do a video. This is inspired by a 30 for 30 that I was watching last night on Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. In case you guys don't know who this is, he is a basketball coach who is with Indiana University for many years. I want to say over 25 years, and won 3 national championships. One of them was with Isaiah Thomas, who played in the NBA, one of the top 50 players of all time. And it's a very good 30 for 30. Like a lot of the 30 for 30s are really good. But I just wanted to use it to talk about some spiritual topics. Try and relate it to the Bible and the end times. So the interesting thing for me about that documentary too, it's a little bit more personal because in high school, we actually, our high school team, all of our teams, we have 3 levels in our high school for sports. We all went to Indiana and visited Indiana University and Notre Dame, and we actually got to sit in during a practice with Bobby Knight. So this would have been around like 97, 98, I want to say. No, it was probably, either 96, 97, 98, one of those years. And, we got to go inside, the stadium and watch a practice, with no one really else in the stands. And, just uncut, unfiltered. And I do find it funny because I remember vividly that he made a comment to one of the players, like, why do they send all the dumb California kids to me? So I could find out who that person was from the roster at that time. I think it was one of their point guards. But around 1999, he went through a very controversial phase where he was accused and later found out that he put his hands on a player around their neck, and the video was released, I guess, from security cameras and stuff. And a few years after that, he was released. And so if you look at his antics, and I'm sure at the beginning he wasn't like that, he wasn't as, mean, aggressive, in the face with the players. But over time, as he achieved success and got a backing, in the documentary, they're talking about him being known as like the Emperor of Indiana, that really no one was standing up to him. And not necessarily even because of his success, because he stopped winning. It's not like he was winning championships kind of like every year or regularly. He won 3, which is obviously a major accomplishment. But, in 20-some seasons, it's not like utter domination. But he just became kind of this larger-than-life figure. And so, to me, like, if you physically look at him, he looks red, just to be blunt. And so we know from the Bible, Esau is red. And so just like Donald Trump, I would be shocked if Bobby Knight is not from that lineage. Because this is the point that I kind of want to talk about, is like, and why America, in my opinion, has become the habitation of devils and needs to be destroyed, is that he was revered. It's like, this is someone who, in my opinion, is antichrist and completely demonic. Like, at that time, I didn't know better, and I thought it was cool to like go to Indiana University and see a practice and stuff. But like now, it's like I wouldn't want to be around somebody like that. It's like I wouldn't find that to be like an enjoyable trip that's like worth money to spend to go. And look forward to it or whatever. I'll be like, I don't want to see Bobby Knight. He seems like a madman. It's like literally going to the insane asylum and watching people be insane. I can get that from somewhere else for free, or not at all. The guy was accused of like coming out of a stall with his pants down and showing his players, like, after he wiped himself from behind, and using that to describe that they're playing like shit. And that's just one of the many things. The choking thing was confirmed. That story was confirmed by multiple players. He's obviously known for throwing chairs and stuff like that. And so this guy is he's Satan. It's like, obviously there's hope for, in my opinion, everybody, because we don't know everybody's, lineage, their past or their future. Only God does. But from what we see, I mean, the guy is Satan, and the most telling thing to me was after this was all said and done and he got fired and went to Texas Tech. Years later, he refused to go to the 40th celebration for one of his championships. And he was on a radio show. This is also in 30 for 30. He was like, I never want to step back on that campus. I hope that all the people in that administration at that time are dead. So this is a guy who's angry because the people in the administration gave him a chance to kind of correct his ways, and then apparently he grabbed a student's arm on campus because the guy called him Knight instead of like by his full name, Bobby Knight or Coach Knight. And so, that was kind of the last straw. They had to like force him to resign. This is a guy who wants all the administration to be dead because he was let go for all the different things that he did. And so this is Satan. Like this to me is absolutely Satan. There is no individual like Antichrist on the earth. And then so I'll use one of the many verses that reference Antichrist, but this one kind of summarizes it. In 1 John 4:3, every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already. So even during his time, John's time, the Antichrist was there. And so to me, this guy, Bobby Knight, who is kind of revered as like quote unquote American hero just for coaching and winning championships, putting a ball into a hole by any means necessary, is revered as somehow, an all-American boy. I mean, this guy was beat red in the face. He was like an angry grandfather, very lewd person, very angry, and wanted to be the center of everything, and all that kind of stuff. And so, like Indiana is like, kind of has a lot of stereotypes, just like, Texas where I live, like small town country people and all that. And, he garnered a huge following. And people were afraid to speak out against him, because they were worried about their career and, just the power that he had in that state and everywhere, in the U.S. And so, this is really what Satan does, like he will, be evil and then somehow convince people that evil is good. And it's very subtle, like even though in this case, it seems very obvious now to me. It was subtle because during that time, growing up, me and a lot of other people, even hearing some of the stories of him, would still have, a tremendous amount of respect for him and what he accomplished. And, if we were to meet him, we would think it would be an honor. I wouldn't even want to be around this guy. It's like the guy's coming out of a stall with like toilet paper with his feces on it. This is an animal, like this is not somebody you want to really be around or touch or anything like that, and so we're aware of these kind of things now, but we have to like let people know what they are, and then if I'm doing stuff like that, or if we see that, we have to examine ourselves as well, of course. So we can't mimic any of that, want attention, use other people as leverage, put people down, unnecessarily and in that way, the way that he was doing, or anywhere near that kind of stuff. And so to me, this is where this ideology of like, just winning, pushing somebody and all of that is the religion of America. And it's like deeply, deeply satanic where, everything's about winning, running faster, doing everything better. And then somehow that's virtuous, like God cares, like God's going to be like, you die and then you go up to in his presence and he's like, so you won 3 national championships. That's awesome. Don't worry how you did it, just go there, sit at an honorable place. Like this is not from God, this is from the opposite of God. This is deeply, deeply satanic, and it's a mantra in our religion that has just permeated the earth. And this is why the Bible says that the world has been deceived and deluded by America's philosophies of capitalism, of winning at all cost, and all that stuff. And I've done this throughout my life, like even to this day, like just being competitive, wanting to win and all that. It's very hard to like cleanse myself of this, even though much of it is gone, majority of it, because I really have completely given up on life overall, not just sports and winning and climbing the corporate ladder and all that stuff. I get the scam now, very, very, very clearly if you know my channel, but there's still aspects of it that linger, and we need to purge that as much as we can, and it's like, it shouldn't be that, it's not that hard, because to me it's becoming extremely obvious how stupid this whole thing is. And then there were people at Indiana, students who are brainless, who are like threatening to kill the guy, the student who got his arm grabbed just for calling him knight. Like that's, if any other professor did that on campus, and one of the professors spoke out and said this, if he did one of the things that Bobby and I did, his tenure would be revoked by the time he got to his office, and that's true. And so, this whole thing of like athletes and winning and bringing in revenue and all that, as putting people above the law and above even morality and all that, it exists. And so, and that is very much the American way. But it's we have to be very clear about calling that out as deeply evil. So who cares what you win? It's like, who cares who the GOAT is or what greatest of all time? All these stupid things, like this whole existence is literally moronic. The only thing that I can think that would salvage this, if I were to look at my life, and I think a lot of people's lives looking back, is God not so much looking for highlights and lowlights. He'll just ask us, what did you learn to not do? What did you learn that was stupid? And, do you really understand how that is the reflection of the opposite of the way I am and the way I think? I don't think too much of the day-to-day, in my opinion, that this existence will matter that much, even though I have a feeling God has a narrative for that, obviously. But largely, I think this existence and this age, for those people who have some connection and desire to get closer to God, is to learn about all the things that we shouldn't be doing, and all the things that are wrong and evil and backwards. And so we had to be kind of dragged through it to see it with our own eyes and have it, be deep into our mind, our soul, whatever you call it. And the Bobby Knight example is a great one of that, and Bobby Hurley's dad, who's another basketball player, he's a coach in New Jersey, and I used to live very close to the high school that he was at. And, he would be revered similar to Bobby Knight, as like, oh, the guy loves the inner city kids. Look at him. He's making all these sacrifices, working for very little. They're on a power trip. It's like they just want all these young kids to revere them. They don't talk about why are the kids in poverty. It's like, where's the money going? Hey, if they have all this notoriety and a platform, Bobby Hurley went to Duke and, has a voice. I believe he's a coach now for in Arizona. So, why don't they use their platform now to speak about, banking, central banking, and where the money's going and how it's not going to the inner city? These people are demonic. They're being revered, even though they're from Satan. And Bobby Hurley, his dad, looks kind of like Bobby Knight, and honestly, to me, red-faced, just old, angry, yelling to win high school games like anyone even cares, about basketball that much. It's just a game, putting a ball in a hole. Come on. So they're utilizing those kids to bring a reputation to that school, which has won a lot of championships. And let's face it, on the back of a lot of black kids, young African-American kids, who I feel many of them are the real Jews of the Bible. And so that aspect is Bible prophecy, but, we have to understand that it's not right then for us to then not call out these people for what they truly are. And they are doing the work of Satan, and they are not reflecting in any way the way that God would coach or lead any team ever. That's just a fact. And so it's we always, obviously hindsight is 2020, but this also to me is related to stuff that I've talked about before, where it's like God will give you what you settle for. And there are a few players that actually left his program and then they ended up dying early at a young age, in their 30s and 40s. Neil Reed and Jason Collins are two examples. The one kid who was choked actually ended up having a massive heart attack at 36. And one of the other players had an unusual heart condition as well and died, in the NBA. So, it's like, I'm not saying that he caused that, but these kids like go to that campus knowing what he's like, and to me this is like we have to like not be okay with settling for being treated poorly. And so this to me is relevant to us today. It's like if the government's requiring us to do anything, obviously ultimately I feel they're going to require people to put a chip in their hand or on their forehead, but even on smaller levels and even in corporate America, like we will only get the treatment that we are going to settle for. So those students and those people at Indiana and those players especially settled for that treatment, with Bobby Knight. And so, in my opinion, God puts people in those situations and only gives them a certain amount of wisdom. But I have a feeling a lot of those players, if they could do it again, would be nowhere near Indiana University if Bobby Knight was the coach. Nowhere near. And so, that's a lesson learned. And there's many situations in my life too that I would avoid if I knew what I knew now. But all we can do moving forward is know that, if we settle for that and worse, revere that as somehow honorable, God's like, okay, go for it. But we saw with Jesus Christ, he was tempted by Satan, given, the nations and all that, which is probably not true, which is the way Satan operates, but, or the spirit of this Antichrist. But let's just say he would actually follow through with what he was offering. Jesus, rejected that. He was given an offer, and, he had the wisdom to know that either he was lying or he doesn't want it. It's like it was already his theologically. But, for the sake of comparing, his ability to refuse, substandard conditions. And he was the same. Like he could have been on earth and politicked his way and lived a longer life and all that kind of stuff. But, he chose death, instead of, weaseling around and all that kind of stuff. He accepted the fate. The system was not designed for a person like him to survive or thrive in any way. And so that is the fate. And so to me, it's very similar to us now. The Bobby Knight example is kind of an extreme example now. He wouldn't be able to get away with that probably in this day and age, just because a lot of players, they know their value a lot more now that the NBA is kind of there's more money in the whole basketball world. And so, and kids younger have more of a chip on their shoulder. They don't need college, to be honest, anymore to make it to the NBA. People's college careers are getting shorter and shorter because high school players are getting better and better. More people are playing basketball at a high level. And the same thing is happening in golf. A lot of young kids are debating whether even college makes sense. And so there's more than one example of people who just don't go to college and then just start playing professional golf. And so that's a different time period. So he kind of got away with it because he could. No one would play for him now if he was doing any of that stuff. And it's just like, it's not fun. It's just like life right now where everybody's a corporate slave. Like, it's just not fun. The scam can't go on forever when people are just going to work, either afraid of their boss, afraid of their job, don't feel like they have job security, being, just kind of bullied or forced to do things that, are just out of loyalty and not out of any kind of benefit for one another or the company. It's the same kind of thing, where there's a general sort of awakening in the world that will make sure that basically this Antichrist system will not, be able to sustain itself for much longer. So to me, it's a good 30 for 30 to check out. To me, he is a very prototypical, good representation of all the evils that are in America. It's a air of righteousness. Even during the protests at Indiana, he comes on the loudspeaker and says, let's let these police officers go home and rest and like with there's an aura of like he's really cares about the police officers or something. He doesn't care at all. He just cares that he's been kicked out of the campus, and then he's like he asks people on his final speech to like say a prayer for him or something. It's like, dude, you're rich, man. Like you've made enough money. Like you've milked the system. These kids just need to go to school and like get their degree. No one cares about you and your 3 championships. Like, go away. And so still like siphoning pity and stuff like that. So this is very, very similar vibration to like what goes on in America, where it's like we're people are painting themselves as the victim. It's like we Americans are the victim. Everybody else, hates freedom except us. We have to like fight, 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 and all that kind of stuff. When in fact, we are the very people, according to the Book of Revelation, America, and in the military and this military might that we are enforcing worldwide are the ones that are actually behind a majority of the killing worldwide. And obviously that is, in my opinion, God's judgment on people worldwide. But from our perspective, we see, we experience evil, spewing out of America. And it's covered in a cloak of righteousness, of like freedom, a love for people, a love for servicemen and women, and all that kind of stuff. When at the root of it, and now it's becoming more and more obvious that that agenda is extremely satanic. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.